What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and Season 5 of the NPL is here, and just recently we did have our draft, and that is what I'll be talking to you guys about today. But before I jump into that, I do want to give a little bit of an overview of some of the changes and updates that have happened for the NPL from Season 4 to Season 5, starting with the addition of 4 additional coaches. Now, in the past, the NPL had been a 12-coach roster, and that was just fine, but this season we were looking to add a couple new coaches, and therefore we opened an application process, and we ended up having over 40 applicants. Most of them were very, very good as well, so we thought it'd really be crazy not to expand to a 16-coach roster. So that is what we did, and in doing so we picked up some very good coaches, and I'll go ahead and give a brief shout out to each of them real quick, and then we will jump into the draft. So first and foremost, we have Palmman, which many of you guys should be familiar with if you've been watching his videos on our channel, and the Brisbane Breloons. He was an interim coach last season for Richard for the last few weeks of the season, so he's not really a new coach per se, but he's now an official coach in that he gets to have his own team name. So that's pretty cool to have Palmman aboard. He's definitely a strong player. Then we have Danza, Crobat for the win, and the Los Angeles Needle Kings returning after his Season 2 championship in the NPL, so obviously has some credentials there, and we're excited to see how he does this season. And then we have a name change, or a team change, location change for Togavor. His Portland Timbers have moved to Arizona and are now the Arizona Carvanas. Then we have the Jersey Dwebbles, coached by Cloud Envy, another solid player, friend of Trev's before this, and he's definitely got some powerful credentials to back up his skill. So then we have Gypsy King and the Sydney Sharpedos. That's the guy that knocked me out of the winner's bracket of the CPC tournament. So obviously he's pretty good, and he honestly could be one of the favorites to win the championship already. And that's saying something with how powerful this league is this season. So definitely a force to be reckoned with. And then we have the Austin Toros, coached by Robin Vart. Rob is the recent champion of the GPC, so congrats to him on that. And that obviously makes him a threat here as well if he can win a league as challenging as the GPC. So next up is the Florida for Alligators, coached by Top Tier Boy. He is a rising Smogon star. It's the only way to put it. He's a very, very good player and actually pretty young at the game. Or I would almost say inexperienced at the game, even though he's probably better than I am. Like, it's ridiculous. But he's a friend of Matty Brawlix, and that's how we were able to connect him to the applications for the NPL, and we're excited to see how he does this season. And then we have the Detroit Leopards, coached by Cypher, and he was a coach in the NPL last season. I believe he's still a coach in the MPL, so that's a major Pokeball League. Pokeball League, I'm not really sure. MPL, regardless, and we're excited to see how he does this season. And I will say his channel content is really, really good. I definitely advise checking that out if you haven't already. Really check out the content of all of our new coaches. They all have a lot going for them. Next up is the Boston Bidoofs, coached by Bidoof's Crazy Videos. This is a friend of Crobat for the win, and also has incredible channel content. He's a good player too. He doesn't have any experience in league format, but I've seen him play in Smogon tiers, and he's got games. So definitely a force to be reckoned with. Not an easy win by any means. So then we have the Phoenix Sunflora, coached by Rizzy Powell, and he was a all-star in our March Madness tournament for the MPL. So he's got game too, and he actually defeated Cheese Boy in that tournament. Might have been a little hacks involved. I'm not going to get too far into that, but he's a good player for sure. So we're excited to have him on board as well. So the 16 coach roster of the NPL is looking really good, and it's going to make it even harder for me to try to finish what I started last season. In that, in case you missed it, I did lose in the finals of Season 4 to a bit of RNG. So we're going to try to remedy that this season, starting with a Week 1 victory against Trev and the Atlanta Braviaries, as we do have a rematch in Week 1. So definitely looking forward to that, and I've already started building for that as well. But now that we are at this point, let's go ahead and jump into the draft analysis. So first of all, the draft structure was a little bit different this season than it has been in the past. In the past it has been an open draft, meaning that I was able to select essentially the best Pokemon available every time it was my turn to draft, because there were no restrictions outside of like a ban list. So this season's a little bit different. Obviously we still have a ban list, but each Pokemon has a point value, so this is kind of the same structure that's used in really most other leagues. We were one of the few leagues still doing an open draft before this, and with that in mind, I do have a salary cap that I cannot exceed. So my duty is to make sure that I can get the best team available without exceeding my salary cap, and I could pick anywhere between 8 and 11 Pokemon. So it's a little bit complicated for me, especially because I don't have experience with this kind of thing in this format, but it's also a fun challenge to see if I can still put together a draft maybe as powerful as last season's, despite having less wiggle room essentially. So first things first, the first Pokemon to enter my team was the Pokemon that I franchised, and in the last season I franchised Clefable, as Clefable essentially is the definition of my playstyle, but unfortunately I'm not allowed to draft Clefable, to franchise Clefable 2 straight seasons. I could still draft it if it were available, but I decided to franchise Lucario. So Lucario has returned from Season 4 to the Season 5 roster, and it really put in so much work for me last season. Even though it wasn't perhaps an MVP caliber Pokemon on my team, it still did its job exactly how it was supposed to every week. Its priority options helped prevent setup sweepers from getting out of hand and allowed me to have more freedom with things like Clefable to run Magic Guard, because I wasn't as fearful of like a Dragon Dance set blowing my entire team back and that kind of thing. So Lucario really is very, very good on my team, especially considering I'm not guaranteed to have Clefable on my roster. So definitely excited to see how Lucario does. Excited to use its physical and special sets, its mixed sets. Again, just re-emphasizing the priority options are the primary reason why I have Lucario. It's also got actually not too bad of defensive typing, even though it's not used for a defensive mon. Its typing does allow me to switch in on a variety of threats and immediately offensively threaten them, so that's pretty cool. Kind of similar to a Mega Mawile type, although obviously not quite as good as Steel Fairy. But yeah, so Lucario is the centerpiece of my team, and I will be trying to build around that. Then, the first draft pick that I decided to select was actually Victini. Now, it's very interesting that Victini was even available by the time it was my turn to draft, as I had the last overall pick in the draft. That was by choice. Obviously, I could have taken, I guess the highest up pick I could have taken was like 7th or so. As returning coaches do have priority in selecting where they want to draft, but all of the choices that I would have rather had were already taken by other coaches who had higher priority than I did, so I decided to stick with a wheel pick and therefore took number 16, as I knew at the 16th slot I should be able to get both a good Mega and a good OU Pokemon, so there really wasn't any point in kind of screwing myself over by taking a middle of the draft order pick. So took a wheel pick, and first part of the wheel I got Victini. Now Victini obviously is one of the best Pokemon in the format, and no one can deny that. Victini has arguably the best offensive move in the game in V-Create, probably not the best, one of the best offensive moves in the V-Create. Fire types are arguably the most powerful type in the format, and its base 100 stats all around make it a threat on so many different levels, in that it can be a defensive threat, offensive threat, specially offensive threat, physically offensive threat, mixed threat. It can be a stall breaker with Taunt and Will-O-Wisp and toxic stuff like that. The only thing it lacks, I guess, is recovery outside of rest, but I believe I should be able to build teams that can support Victini enough to where it becomes a threat on every facet of the game. So Victini is a big-time threat that I'm excited to use. The only downside to having a Victini Lucario core early is the ground weakness, but I will do my best to remedy that later on in the draft. So next up on the second part of my wheel, I decided to select Sylveon. Now this is actually a surprise to many, as Clefable was actually still available at this point. And in hindsight, maybe I could have drafted Clefable, but then again, I do want to have fun with this league, and I've had Clefable 2 straight seasons. I want to mix it up a little bit, you know? So I decided to go with Sylveon this time around. It was also worth, I believe, 1 point less than Clefable, so that's one more point I can spend in the future. But Sylveon is something that I really do like using Sylveon. It was on my main team for XYOU, and it performed very well until the Manaphy meta became a thing and I had to switch to Clefable on that team. Sylveon was my man, and I'm definitely excited to use Sylveon in a draft format, as now it's going to be able to really show the full extent of its move pool. And that Hyper Voice is obviously the staple of Sylveon, but it also has access to things like Baton Pass, Calm Mind, Shadow Ball, Side Shock. Hidden Powers obviously are going to be strong. It actually has Quick Attack, which is a nice little priority option for Sylveon, especially against setup sweepers that are weak to Fairy types. And Fairy types is just such a good type that I'm excited to see how that works out. But just in general, A-Drive did experience some pretty good success with a Victini Sylveon core, so I am excited to see how that works for me, especially considering the plans I had to support that core. So Sylveon's looking pretty fun. This also gives me a very good answer to some of the other Megas, or some of the other Pokemon that I know I'm going to have to face here early in the season, in that I do have to face both Mega Latios and Mega Latias this season, as well as regular Latios, I believe. So Sylveon is very handy to have around to deal with those powerful dragons and other dragons, of course. So that's the first 3 mons of my team. Next up, on my next wheel, I decided to go ahead and grab my Mega, and that Mega is the return of Mega Venusaur, as Mega Venusaur supports Victini and Sylveon, honestly, very, very well. Sylveon supports Mega Venusaur perfectly, as just anytime you have Mega Venusaur, you have to have Fairy support with Wish. That is the only way Mega Venusaur will shine. Or Vaporeon is also good, as evidenced by my Season 2 run. Just Wish support in general is essential for Mega Venusaur, so that it has more freedom to do, other things. And really, with how my team is structured at this point, I'm able to run bulky offense, I'm able to run balance, and I'm also able to run offense, as Mega Venusaur, while a bulkier Pokemon, still has a very high special attack stat. It can still do a lot of work on a hyper offensive build. So really, that's the goal with my draft, is to make sure I can play any play style outside of Stall. Stall sucks, and do very well with any style. So that's the idea overall. The only issue here is that I'm quite a heavy spender here in these first 4 rounds, as I've already spent 18, 18, 17, and 18 on those Pokemon, so I can't really get anything else that's high point value from this point forward, unless I want to only have like 8 Pokemon on my team, and that's not really ideal, to say the least. So yeah, Mega Venusaur, just like in the past, it's a pretty, I don't want to say it's one-dimensional, but its best sets are definitely one-dimensional, in that it's going to want to run some combination of Sludge Bomb, Giga Drain, Leech Seed, Synthesis, Sleep Powder. Those are its best moves, but it also can run defensive moves, like one kind of cool set that I saw not too long ago was like an Amnesia Curse set. That could definitely come into play. As well as just a Curse offensive set, like that set I brought against Cheese Boy in the Season 3 playoffs. So yeah, Mega Venusaur can do a lot more than what you would think at face value, and I'm excited to use that this season. So then, after those 4 selections, I decided it was a very good idea to turn to my hazard support, as I had no way to lay hazards, I had no way to get rid of them, and if I want Victini to be anything decent, then I'm going to have strong hazard support. So, I just decided to go ahead and complete my Fire, Water, Grass core, and patch up both the hazard remover and the hazard layer void in my team, and select Empoleon for 10 points. And Empoleon is a return from my Season 2 roster. I found that it supported Mega Venusaur quite well, especially when I'm not going to have so many electric weaknesses. That was the big issue with my Season 2 roster, in that I wanted to bring both Vaporeon and Empoleon every single weekend. This season I have Sylveon, Mega Venusaur, and Empoleon, making for a absolutely disgusting core. I'm excited to use this whenever I do decide to run balance or bulky offense, as it just completes the core very well. The only type, I believe, that I don't really have a strong answer to is like a banded ground type or something like that with that core. And I'll definitely have ways to deal with that with the other Pokemon on my roster. So, yeah, excited to see how that does. Empoleon obviously has access to Stealth Rock, Defog, primary reasons for having it, but it's also a threat offensively, in that its special coverage is strong. It has Grass Knot, Surf, Scald, Ice Beam, Flash Cannon, any sort of hidden power I might want. I believe a couple others as well. And then it also has a decent physical move pool, having Aqua Jet for priority, as well as Swords Dance. Has knockoff, earthquake, stuff like that. Like, it can do a lot of things, and I'm definitely excited to see how that works. So, next up is Salamence. Now, Salamence is a Pokemon that I've really been wanting to use on this in this format for quite a while. I think it's underappreciated, but its point value is about what I think it should be. It was a 14-point Pokemon, so not quite as high as things like Victini and Mega Venusaur, but still pretty cheap for how powerful it is and how versatile it is. I know how strong its move pool is. I used it a lot in DPP before it got banned, and I know how powerful it is for that reason. So Salamence is something that I think can put in a lot of work for me this season, both defensively and offensively. Now, defensive sets for Salamence are something that I think my team will benefit potentially the most from, in that it does have Heal Bell, I believe. It has Wish. It also has access to, Roost, Toxic, stuff like that. So it can do a lot of support roles for my team, and just having Intimidate makes it a great physical or physically defensive mon if that is what it needs to be for a particular week. The only issue being its 4x weakness to Ice, but considering I have Lucario, Victini, Mega Venusaur, and Sylveon, and Empoleon, all of those really can switch into Ice attacks very well. So, yeah, I'm not terribly concerned about the 4x weakness in that regard. So, yeah, so Salamence can be also very strong on the physical and especially offensive sides. Being capable of running powerful Dragon Dance sets boosted by Moxie potentially. Also has, Draco Meteor, Hydro Pump, Fire Blast, Flamethrower, Dragon Balls. I'm trying to think of other special attacks it has. I guess not the most expansive special move pool. Obviously, it's Hidden Power as well, but it's still a very potent special move pool, as Dragon Fire really covers most things outside of like Heatran, and Heatran is hit by Earthquake, so like that's a pretty good deal too. So yeah, Salamence is looking pretty strong overall, and I'm excited to see how it does in this season. So after that is where I make potentially my most questionable pick in the draft, and I'm not actually sure how I feel about it yet at this point. It was kind of a rush selection, unfortunately, but I did decide to pick Cloister for my next pick. Now, Cloister can do a handful of things, although its obvious best set is a Shell Smash, Shell Smash Sweeper, but it also has access to Rapid Spin, Toxic Spike, Spikes. Now, if you look at the rest of the rosters in the NPL, almost all of them are pretty well handled by Toxic Spikes. So you can expect to most likely see Toxic Spikes Cloister at least once this season, probably more, just because it is such a great support option for a team like mine that's hits so hard, and that just a little bit of damage from Toxic Spikes and Rocks can definitely just do all the damage I need to be able to OHKO really an entire team. So Cloister can be pretty good on that front, but further it's Shell Smash, Rock Blast, Icicle Spear sets, in addition to having access to things like Ice Shard and Natural Gift, make it a force to be reckoned with. And I didn't even mention its special options and hidden powers and Hydro Pump, and I believe probably Ice Beam as well. I haven't really looked into its special move pool as much, but Shell Smash boosted special moves are still strong and are force to be reckoned with. So yeah, Cloister is pretty good. I think the only issue with it for me is that it does kind of double up on some weaknesses on my roster, and I probably could have selected a better option in that slot, perhaps a Dark type with Toxic Spikes, something like that, like a Drapion type maybe. That would have been really cheap. It would have also given me another Taunter, so that's an option that could have done. But it would have given me another ground weakness, I guess, so that's not too good either. I don't know. I'll be thinking about maybe ways to remedy that slot later on in the future. But until then, Cloister is a force to be reckoned with. And I didn't even mention the potential to run a King's Rock set on the Cloister. So I'll be looking out for that, guys. And we'll go ahead and move on to the next Pokemon that I picked, which arguably is the most important Pokemon in my entire draft. And that is Ditto. Now, if you look through my team is, relatively weak to setup sweepers. I have priority from Lucario, I have potential priority from Sylveon and Empoleon, but really, in general, a Pokemon could set up something like an Agility or something like a Dragon Dance and put in a lot of work against my team. But Ditto is here to deter that a little bit, as obviously Ditto has Imposter, and I can just copy any stat changes that may occur with the Ditto and use them against my opponent. So having this ability, or this deterrence to set up, was absolutely essential in making my team function. And the reason I had to get Ditto was because I didn't get Clefable. So that's why, looking back at the Sylveon pick, I probably could have just gotten a Clefable and essentially saved myself 4 points, as Clefable was 18 points, Sylveon was 17, Ditto was 5. I could have saved myself 4 points there and gotten something else in that slot by getting Clefable instead of Sylveon, but this is the route I decided to take this season, and we'll just see how it works out, I suppose. But I do think Ditto is still a good Pokemon, especially for 5 points in this format. And grabbing Ditto myself does, give Cloister a little bit more free reign against the rest of the league. It gives DD Salamence a little bit more free reign. So yeah, it also gives SD Lucario a little bit more as well, as I don't want Ditto to, copy my Lucario or any of those Pokemon. That'd be kind of bad. I also have PTSD from, I don't know if you guys happen to watch a video from a long time ago on this channel. TheTokenMinorities did a in-house monotype tournament. This was like 2 years ago, I think, and I played against Lizardon, one of our old channel, one of our special guests on our channels from my school, and I had a Cloister, he had a Ditto, and I stupidly went for Shell Smash whenever he still had a Ditto in the back, and he proceeded to copy my Shell Smash with Ditto and sweep my entire team. So I have a little bit of PTSD from that still, and I'm excited that that will not be used against me this season. Anyways, moving back to reality. So next up is Azelf. Now, Azelf was a Pokemon that I did not give much of a chance to in Season 2. And that's mainly because it was outclassed by Alakazam on my roster for the role that it was going to fulfill. And that's, it's a speedy Pokemon, and it's a Psychic type. It doubled up with Alakazam Season 2. There's no reason for me to have both. This season's a little bit different, as it fits my team like a glove. It has access to Levitate, so that helps again with that ground weakness that's kind of redundant a little bit at this point. But it also has incredible physical and special options, access to Nasty Plot, access to Taunt, Stealth Rock, Trick even, which is a very fun option to use, and really many more too. Natural Gift as well, and Natural Gift is a very good move in the format I'm finding. But yeah, overall Azelf is looking pretty strong on this team, and just in general. I'm excited to finally have a team that really supports Azelf well, and I think it's going to put in a lot of work this season because it's supported so well by the team. It's an excellent wall breaker, which obviously will help Victini, or Victini can wall break for Azelf, and it's a very fun combination to be working with this season. So that's Azelf. Next up is Piloswine, primarily here to be an electric resistance, or electric immunity rather, as my only electric resistance of any kind was Mega Venusaur, and that's just Volt Switch fodder, so I needed something to kind of slow down Volt Switch. This also gives me a decent bird check, both the things like Mega Pinsir, Talonflame, just Staraptor kind of, bar close combat. Piloswine does slow down teams like that, or Pokemon like that, enough to where my other team can pick up the slack, I guess, and pull out a victory in that way. So yeah, Piloswine was really a necessity, or something of that kind. I played with something like Zepstrika as well to take advantage of Volt Switch, as opposed to just being immune to it. But I decided Piloswine was better just because it's bulkier. That's more my style anyways. It does give me another Stealth Rocker, and Priority Ice Shard is always nice for the dragons. And yeah, so that's Piloswine, and finally I picked up Nosepass. I had 1 point left. I decided it was better to have something than nothing because it forces my opponent to prepare for it a little bit, and I picked up Nosepass. I actually don't want to give details on why I picked Nosepass, just in case my opponents don't know why I picked it. But let's just say Nosepass is more than just a nose. And it can do a little bit of damage to some teams if they're not ready for it, and I think it was a good buy for 1 point. So that is the draft, and like I said, it has some holes. Mainly the Cloister slot is what I'm a little bit uncertain on at this point, but that can be remedied with future free agency selections or trades that I'll be looking into here in the future. But as far as the draft at face value, I think it's good. I don't think it is as solid perhaps as my team last year, as my team last season was, in my opinion, perfect for my playstyle, and that I could have run bulky offense, I can run hyper offense safely because I have so many priority options. And really, it could do so much for me. This season's a little bit different. The team is slightly bulkier than last season, and maybe slightly more dependent on defensive builds, which is fine. I do think I have the necessary tools to pull that off effectively. It's just a little bit harder to run safe hyper offense. That said, it's not all about being safe either, as my hyper offense and bulky offense options are strong. I have essentially everything. Yes, everything on my roster can run a strong offensive set outside of, Pilot Swine and Nosepass. Don't worry about those two. But everything else can run very strong offensive options. Therefore, my team can run hyper offense. Therefore, my team can run bulky offense. My team can run balance. My team can even run like a semi-stall type play style. Stall will not happen. But my team is versatile. My team is powerful, and my team is relatively... It's not the best speed tiers. I'll say it's not the best speed tiers on my team, but I do have Evolve to compensate for anything that my base 100s cannot outspeed. But I have plenty of good priority options and scarf options to also help compensate for those speed tiers. I think my draft is good, and I think it's going to be good enough to get us where we want to go, and that is the playoffs. And then we want to, once we get there, finish what we started last season and win the Season 5 championship. So that is the goal, and I will make sure to make that happen, as long as RNG doesn't have something to say about that, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Now, before we go any further, I do want to go over the divisions. We have St. Louis Reshiram's, Atlanta Braviaries, Boston Bidoofs, and Jersey Dwellbles. So that is Matty Brawlick, Trev, Bidoofs, Crazy Videos, and Cloud Envy all in one division. So that's a pretty heated division, I would say, especially with the Matty Brawlick, Trev. They're at the top, but we all know that Cloud and Bidoof are going to give them a good run as well. They might even pull off the divisional win. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Then we have the Dream Division with the San Antonio Swampers, Los Angeles Needle Kings, Phoenix Sunflora, and the Phoenix Sunkern. So we have the little Phoenix rivalry there between Rizzy and Cheese, as well as Danza and Dallas in that division, so that's a heated division as well. Then we have the Premier Conference with the Arizona Carvanas, Sydney Sharpedos, Florida for Alligators, and Detroit Liperts. So Toj, Gypsy, Top Tier Boy, and Cypher, also a heated division. A couple strong Smogon players there in Sydney and Florida. And then, of course, Toj is very experienced, or even Cypher is also very experienced in the format. So definitely a tough division there. And then my division, which is the Austin Toros, Toronto Staraptors, New York Metangs, and the Brisbane Braylums. So that is Robin, the champion of the GPC, myself, Razor, he's been around the league since Season 1, so he obviously knows what he's doing. And then the Brisbane Braylums, coached by Palmman, which you guys, of course, should be pretty familiar with at this point. He is a very strong player, and obviously strong competition as well. So this season's looking good. My draft's looking pretty fun, and I am excited to see what I can do this season with my draft and against this level of competition. So that's about all I have to say. Thanks for watching, guys. The Season 5 Week 1 uploads should be coming up on June 19th. I might do a team builder on the 18th. I guess we'll see how I'm feeling at that point. But yeah, it should be a Wi-Fi battle as well. So I hope you're looking forward to that. But I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all on June 19th. Peace.